You become what broke you the most unless you finally heal. Hello, guys, welcome back. My name is Hannah, and today we're going to talk about childhood traumas and how to actually break the cycle. Before we start, I want you to open yourself to a new perspective and to see your past and your development and your experiences not only as a burden, but also as a divinely given opportunity. I know how hard it is to go through all of that, but it also means that the universe has chosen you to break the cycle because you're the most powerful soul in your ancestral line. First of all, we're going to talk about the signs you may suffer from childhood trauma. You have to find out that you exhibit behavior in certain situations that indicates you may suffer from childhood trauma. For example, because you're very anxious. That could result in you showing behavior like flinching immediately whenever you hear the sound of footsteps, because as a child you associated the sound of specific footsteps with a specific person, and you subconsciously knew that you might get into an uncomfortable situation whenever you would hear the person approaching you. Trauma also manifests itself in having difficulty to express feelings because you can't show feelings at all, or you get completely overwhelmed by them and can't deal with them. This can result, for example, from the fact that your parents didn't really take your emotions as a child seriously because you were just a child. Another reason can be that your parents simply were unable to empathize with your emotions or to accompany your feelings, or you were even taught to not show any emotions because it would be a sign of weakness. Furthermore, if you can't remember a lot of your childhood and don't really have a lot of childhood memories, that also indicates that you may suffer from childhood trauma. Because in the case of having experienced traumatic events, the brain suppresses these experiences and memories in order to ensure your survival as a child. How did I actually realize that I suffered from childhood trauma? I personally realized that I suffered from childhood trauma when I started to reflect on my unstable relationships. So unstable friendships, and also in my later adult life, unstable romantic relationships. I noticed that I had become attached to people who treated me in the exact same way as I was used to be treated in my childhood, or they embodied the same archetype as my parents. That was when I recognized a pattern in that. I was also incredibly anxious, flinching immediately whenever I would hear a car approach our house, whenever I would hear the door opening or footsteps getting closer, and I would know exactly who would approach me and how much time based on the sound of their footsteps and the distance of them. All of this was part of a survival mode that I subconsciously developed. My nervous system was basically tuned and focused to be prepared and able to react when a potentially dangerous situation would occur. Another indication of me having experienced childhood trauma was that I had very low self-esteem. Very, very low self-esteem. I didn't set any boundaries back then, not with my parents, not with my friends, not in romantic relationships, no boundaries at all. I didn't prioritize myself, I put others on a pedestal, and I didn't even stand up for myself whenever I would be humiliated by others. It has actually been the opposite. I was even convinced that I didn't deserve it any other way, and that it was normal to treat me that way because I had such low self-esteem. I've also been the biggest people pleaser. I always wanted to please everyone. I always wanted to make everyone like me, and I couldn't say no. I literally sacrificed myself and my resources for others, especially for those people who didn't like me at all. For example, back then when I was in middle school, I would always buy sweets for my pocket money and share them with everyone, especially with these kids who didn't want to have anything to do with me. Why did I do that? I was hoping to get the social validation and recognition from these kids that I didn't receive at home. I was hoping to get this recognition from people who embodied the same archetype as my parents or the same characteristics as my parents, who didn't appreciate me in the way that I actually deserved it. Moreover, I was the biggest perfectionist, and I put so much pressure on myself when it came to grades at school, because I thought that when I would get perfect grades, I might be more lovable in my parents' eyes. According to my research and my experiences, signs for traumatic events in childhood can be insomnia, anxiety, having repetitive nightmares or flashbacks, very low self-esteem, having difficulty to express emotions, or other physical or mental issues. Based on a book recommendation in a TED Talk, I also bought this book. It is called Toxic Parents: Overcoming Their Hurtful Legacy and Reclaiming Your Life, and it was written by Susan Forward. It actually includes a lot of questions that you can ask yourself to check on whether you might suffer from childhood trauma. And I'm gonna put the questions into the description box so that you can ask yourself these questions, answer them for yourself, and reflect on whether you might suffer from childhood trauma. In summary, if you can identify with these examples or even my experiences, then it might be worth to reflect on your past and on your behavior, rather once too much than once too little. Traumas are immortal until someone decides to let them die. Traumas aren't once and never again events. They live on in cycles. They get passed on from generation to generation to generation. And that's exactly why it's so important to deal with your trauma and to heal it. Otherwise, it would be buried alive in your subconscious and live on in your family until someone decides to finally heal themselves. If you don't heal your trauma, if you don't resolve your trauma, you will actually become the archetype that traumatized you. You will become the trauma in relation to the next generation, in relation to your children. If you don't heal your trauma, if you don't resolve your trauma, it will live on in your subconscious. In the very subconscious that, according to scientific belief, controls about 95% of your daily actions and decisions, and thus the majority of the course of your life. Now the most important question: how do I actually break the cycle? Step 1 is to look for patterns. The fact that traumas are passed on in generations and remain within families is also known as patterns. These can not only be reflected within relationships within the family, but also in friendships and romantic relationships. Perhaps you've also already heard people saying that they think they married their mother or their father because their partner is so much like one of their parents. That is such a pattern. If you were rejected by a parent as a child or didn't receive enough love as a child, this can manifest itself in emotional dependency in relationships as an adult later in life. You could also have the fear of losing someone or losing your partner, or you could specifically be looking for someone who can show you love as well. The reason for showing this behavior is because it gives you comfort, because it comforts you to be treated in the way that you have always been treated since you were a child. No matter how negative this behavior affects your well-being. To be able to solve patterns, you obviously first need to know how they look like. Otherwise, it would be like trying to redecorate a pitch black room at night without even knowing what's in it. So ask yourself what similarities you can think of in the relationship to your parents, in their relationships, in general relationships within your family, but also friendships and romantic relationships. What similarities occur? Write down all of the characteristics you can think of and look at them and circle those who repeatedly occur. These are the patterns you have to resolve. You can also do a little research on this by asking your parents, your grandparents if possible, just by talking to your relatives, because often other family members know other family members a little bit better than we do because they have known each other for a longer time. When identifying these patterns and characteristics, be open to uncomfortable truths and be honest with yourself, because only what you first acknowledge to exist can be changed. Then reflect on the origin of the patterns and ask yourself how you can act in the opposite way and how you can act in a way that prevents other characteristics from developing within yourself. For example, if your mother was emotionally dependent on your father because you had very low self-esteem and you tend to react in the same way because that's how you grew up watching her act in this way, then work on your self-esteem. If someone in your family is very aggressive, then work on that. Work on your ability to stay calm in arguments. Work on your resilience. Ask yourself how you can deal with your emotions in a different way. If you have difficulty to feel or show emotions, allow yourself to feel and show these emotions. Allow yourself to cry. Allow yourself to be vulnerable by acting differently. Even just by pausing when you're about to react in the usual way, questioning your behavior. That is how you break the cycle. That is how you let go of these patterns. And you not only free yourself, but also the next generation, your potential children from that. Each step is a step closer to your goal, and each step is worth being celebrated, because ultimately, each step contributes to the fact that you reach the end goal, that you heal. Healing is an ongoing process. It's not done with making the decision to heal. It only really starts by then. But even the realization that you can do better and that you deserve better, and the decision to finally put an end to this, should make you so proud of yourself. Last but not least, how to actually heal from your trauma. Probably the best known way to heal is through therapy. If that is not an option for you, there are many other options that you can choose of. For example, journaling. Journaling helps you to express your feelings and to reflect on them. Moreover, it gives you the opportunity to tell yourself the story and your emotions, and therefore understand yourself a little bit better. Journaling allows you to go into the depth, to localize your feelings, and to identify the origin and to work on that. You can use normal journals. You can also use shadow work journals that are specifically designed for that occasion, that include a lot of questions on reflecting your feelings and remembering your past. But you can also look for questions on Pinterest or simply ask yourself some questions to reflect on that. I will also put a link into the description box where you can find some of these questions to work on your shadow self. Additionally, affirmations are so great for healing trauma because you can really individualize them according to your specific issue. So I feel worthless becomes I'm confident and I love myself unconditionally all the time. I can't communicate my feelings becomes I'm emotionally intelligent and I communicate my feelings openly and with ease. If you don't want to create your own affirmations, you can also use affirmation tapes for the specific occasion. Last but not least, I want to recommend meditation. Especially guided meditations are great for resolving trauma. They give you the opportunity to dive into the past once again and to forgive yourself for acting in the way that you did. Something that, in my opinion, is essential for being able to let go. Whatever you choose to do, I wish you all the best and all the love that you deserve on your path. I know you can do it, and I'm so proud of you. That was it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope I could help you, and hopefully we will see each other in the next video.